Good morning. It really is very early in the morning. It's just gone 7 o'clock, but I thought I would start filming now because Ross is out all day. He's working at the office today, and even Joli's got a doggy play date today, so I have got the whole flat to myself, and I thought I would start this day off on a productive note and use it to get so much plant stuff done, because I'm working my way through my list, but I've still got so much stuff that needs tackling. So yeah, I thought I would just bring you along with me for pretty much all of it and film as much as I could, and then we can do things together and hopefully it will be a little bit more fun. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Joli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yeah, so I would have thought this is probably going to be a pretty long video. I'm going to aim to film as much as I can throughout the day. And so yeah, if you've got plant stuff that you've been putting off, or you've just got loads that you need to get on top of, then as always, by all means do it along with me and we can chat through things as we go and do it together. And yes, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So one thing I thought I would just start off by doing before I get showered and dressed, I thought I would just give my Philodendron Splendid a pest treatment. I have noticed some spider mite damage on a couple of the leaves, and although I haven't been able to see anything, it has been next to a plant that had spider mites a few months ago, and I've checked that plant and I have separated them. It's my Alocasia Jacqueline, my other plant, and yeah, I haven't been able to see anything, but I have got some horticultural soap and neem oil mixed up from a plant that I treated yesterday. So I thought there's no harm in doing it. I may as well just give its leaves a really good wipe over, and then if there is anything underlying like that I can't see, at least then the issue's dealt with. I think it's definitely better to be safe than sorry. And I'm never particularly strict with my ratios when I mix up pest treatment for spider mites, but I'll put roughly what I use on the screen, but it does seem to do the job. And I'm getting in there with a makeup brush just because it helps to get into all the little cracks and crevices that you might not be able to otherwise. As I say, I was pest treating a couple of plants yesterday, and I did go back over my Alocasia Jacqueline just because it is a magnet for spider mites, and using a makeup brush to get into the cracks and crevices of that plant is pretty much vital, because it's got little hooks all over its leaves, and it means that if you just use a standard like sponge or something, it can be really hard to target certain areas. So it just makes life a lot easier. And the reason I thought I'd do this first thing is because some of you have made a very good point. Some of you in the comments have said, do you think that perhaps pests are spreading in my collection because I don't change my clothes between pest treating? And I think that's a really, really, really valid point. I often think that maybe pests get into my collection because I take Joli out and I walk her in the forests and I bring her back in and I'm like, does she come back with stuff attached to her fur? And it is 100% the same principle. And although I always wash my hands and I always am very strict about like washing the surfaces that I've been working on, I think, yeah, I think I should absolutely make it more of a habit to change what I'm wearing if I am dealing with a plant with pests. So I thought I would get this done and then I can shower and make my list for the day. And one of the things that is absolutely on my list, and assuming I've got all the right materials, I might try and get done today, is taking my Philodendron Splendid and transforming its moss pole from just like the standard round moss pole it's on at the moment into a D-shaped one. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a really, really, really long time, just because this moss pole does dry out very quickly. I hydrate it pretty much every single day, and even then, if the radiators are on, it does dry out very, very fast. So assuming I've got enough acetate sheeting, I think I'm probably going to do that. I don't think it's going to be the most straightforward thing in the world. I know some of you have given me some very good ideas about how I can do it. But because, and I'll show you up close when we get to that, but because of the way this plant is growing, the main stem is very close to the bit where you would, oh, I'm explaining this badly. The main stem is like right where the cable ties run. So I know I could just undo the whole moss pole and just put sheeting on the back. But then I feel like the plant might be sitting at a really weird angle. So I will figure that out as I go. But oh my goodness, that would be a massive thing ticked off my list if I could do that today. Amazing. Okay, that is the plant completely pest treated. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to rehydrate its current moss pole, just because I think it's going to be a little bit easier to work with if the moss is hydrated as opposed to dry. It's not completely dry at the moment, but it could do with a little bit of water. So I'm just going to go fill its little cup and then, yeah, jump in the shower, de-pest myself, and then we can crack on. And this is not plant related in the slightest, but a few of you have asked what I put on my face, so here's approximately 10 seconds of my skincare in a nutshell. So seeing as I'm pretty sure I will be making a mess today, seeing as I'm having an all planty day, I thought instead of making mess upon mess, it was probably a sensible idea, and I probably wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't filming this, but I thought it was a sensible idea to give the flat a little tidy up just to start with. This is something that I'm really trying to get better at, because usually, as I say, I will just be like, this needs doing, and I'll just start doing something without tackling things that need tackling first. So I'm holding myself accountable, and I'm gonna have a clear up. Absolutely use the sour cream pot for planty things. I'm just going to give it a rinse. One of the benefits of Ross moving in is that he's brought with him this very fancy coffee machine, which I'm enjoying very much. And in my attempt to be healthier this year, I'm starting my morning with a bowl of granola with fresh berries and nuts and seeds and all the things that are supposed to be really, really good for you. So I'm gonna go shove this in my face, and then we can get on with some plant stuff. So I thought I'd jump straight in with the finicky thing, which is the conversion on my Philodendron Splendid's moss pole. And I was thinking, I mean, it might not be as difficult as I think it's going to be, but I'll show you up close in a minute why I think it might be a little bit difficult to do. And seeing as I don't have a Joli today, I'm not going to work at the table. I thought I would pull it back and work in the middle of the floor, which feels quite nice. I haven't done that in a while. So I feel like I explained this poorly before, but if you look at my Philodendron Splendid, and you can see the cable ties that are holding the mesh together on the circular moss pole, the plant's starting to grow over them. So I think even when I do get it onto a D-shaped moss pole, it might be growing a little bit weirdly for a while. I also think it's probably a good opportunity. Oh, I was going to say to repot this plant, and I've just pulled it straight out. Oh my God, it's got so many roots. Whoa. Okay, so I was not expecting that in the slightest, because this is the plant that I did the chop and extend on, I think about maybe 5 or 6 months ago now. And when I first potted this up, it didn't have any roots in the soil at all. All of its root system was in the moss pole. And I mean, I guess like you don't notice because obviously it's in the soil, but those are crazy roots. So I think it's going to be due for a pot upgrade today as well, which is fun. Fun, you know what I mean. I always feel like once you get a plant repotted and onto a bigger moss pole, it always feels like the plant is like healthier and fuller. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what she's going to look like at the end of it. So I brought over things like wire cutters, my acetate sheeting, some markers, some scissors, all the standard stuff. And I think I might need some more sphagnum moss as well, because I'm not going to be able to make the grid any wider. So I think I'm going to have to make it quite a deep D-shaped moss pole. So yeah, I'm just going to grab some more sphagnum moss. Also lying this plant down, just because of the way it's growing. Oh, I don't want to hurt its leaves. It is a plant that has taken many a tumble recently. I knocked this plant. I know I'd said in my video when everything came crashing down, this plant, did this plant get affected with that? I can't remember. But I pulled a load of plants down just after I filmed that video by accident. I was hydrating my Monstera dubia's moss pole and I didn't realise quite how heavy it was. And this plant was one of the ones that was affected, hence why, if you saw earlier, it's got quite a few ripped leaves, which is such a shame. But I can see it's got a really nice root system growing in this pole, which is good. I'm thinking if I can pack out the back with a little bit more moss. Ooh. Okay, there's actually 2 parts to this pole, which I didn't realise. I forgot that I extended it. Okay, we will figure that out as we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just because, as you can see, that is actually 2 different sections of moss pole. Oh, I've already done it. I was going to say I'm just going to put a cable tie at the front, but by the looks of that, I thought of that last time, which is good. So yeah, I'm just going to ease the current moss pole apart as much as I possibly can. In fact, I think it goes all the way down, so I'm going to have to break up the soil as well a little bit. My God, look how long that root is. This is amazing growth for such a short space of time. Honestly, this has just blown my mind. So ideally, what I want to do now is try and get the wire that's been curved as the round moss pole as flat as I possibly can. This isn't going to be, this is not going to be straightforward at all. I've got aerial roots there that I can see have like grown through both sections and they're almost like holding it together. Ideally, I don't want to have to cut any of the aerial roots, but I'm thinking I might have to a little bit here and there. Much easier on the upper section because obviously it hasn't been rooted in that quite as long as it has on the bottom. It might not be able to be completely flat, it might just have to be a bit rough, I think, which is okay. Just going to put one more cable tie on the place where the grid where I extended it before crosses just to make sure it's really secure, because it does not feel it at the moment. Okay, and this is going to be a really, unless I want to trim even more of the grid here back and make that thinner, this is going to be a really thick, chunky moss pole. But I think I kind of want it. Also, this is an awful camera angle, sorry. That's a little bit better. I think I kind of want it to be a really thick, chunky one, because my struggle so far is that this one dries out so quickly I can't always stay on top of keeping it hydrated. So I feel like if it is really sealed and there is a lot of moss in there, then that kind of eliminates my issue and allows the plant to just absorb much more micronutrients. So I think I'm gonna go with a huge one. This is probably gonna be the chunkiest moss pole I've ever made. I've actually only got 2 bits of sheeting left, so I was gonna say maybe I'll extend it height-wise as well, but I don't think I'm gonna do that just for today. And in fact, I've got a piece pre-cut here that I did for my Monstera dubia's moss pole recently, and I didn't end up using all of it because I thought I would extend as I went. And I think this would be about the right size. So I think I'm gonna just cut my other one to fit this. And I've said before as well, but this is just clear, transparent acetate sheeting that I use. I get it on Amazon, I will link it down below. But it works really well, and it's just very easy stuff to use, easy stuff to work with. Don't know why, it feels much nicer working on the floor as opposed to at the table with a potting mat. I think also obviously I'm quite lucky because I've got wooden floors in this place. It means that I can just sweep up and clean up quite easily afterwards. But I don't know why, it feels a little bit, I was going to say more natural. It just doesn't feel as like, what am I trying to say? Positioned, staged, as it does when I sit at the table. Because typically I think if I had the flat to myself all the time and I didn't have a big dog that wants to get involved with everything, I would want to be on the floor. So yeah, this feels quite nice. And what I'm trying to do as I go, you might be able to see, is just kind of break the moss apart a little bit that's already there, just to encourage the existing aerial roots to just spread a little bit. And then I'm going to fill the rest with sphagnum moss as I go down and just kind of fill it out a little bit. Oh, this is the fiddly bit, because it's right where the plant is growing over the edge of the pre-existing moss pole. And what I think I'll probably do, similarly to what I do with my Monstera dubia when I want to try and keep it going straight up the plank or the moss pole, whatever I'm using, I'll use either, if it's a plank actually, I'll use a pin. So this is applying to moss poles, I'll use like a hairpin or a stake or something just to kind of poke in between. I'll insert a clip so that you can see what I mean, but just to go in between the grid so that it helps to keep the stem from kind of bending one way or the other. It's purely an aesthetic thing, but obviously if you're using a moss pole, you don't want your plant completely growing off it in a different direction because it defeats the point of using a moss pole. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this one, and hope that although it's gone a little bit wibbly over to the side, hope that as it continues to grow, it will eventually straighten itself out. Trying to do this as gently as I can so that I don't damage the leaves. I can see I've got a rip in one of them already. I'm trying to be so careful, but really the plant does need to be facing down for this, just because of how it's growing. trying to break up the moss pole at the bottom here so that I can separate the aerial roots, and it's just solid with root, so there's not going to be a huge amount I can do. You can also see the difference in the colour of moss as I put it coming down. The stuff that's already been in there is much greener, and that's actually algae. And to be honest, in a moss pole, I personally think that's a good thing. It just shows that you've been keeping it nice and hydrated. But yeah, it actually looks quite pretty, the colour difference at the moment. And I would have thought over the next few weeks, as I keep the new section of moss hydrated, I'd have thought the aerial roots will just kind of naturally spread and I shouldn't have to do much more. I just think the plant is going to be so much happier and healthier like this. And I've said it before as well, but when you're joining two pieces of sheeting together to make a moss pole, make sure that the lower one is above the one above. You want the one above to be essentially tucked into the lower one. And if you don't do this, I learnt this from experience, if you don't do this, then it basically just means when you water the moss pole to hydrate it, the water's just going to run straight down and onto the floor. It's not going to actually be kind of like pushed into the lower part of the pole, and that obviously defeats the point of doing it at all. So yeah, if I'm doing an extension upwards, I'll typically just leave a little overhang and tuck it into the existing moss pole. Perfect. Yay. Okay. Sorry I didn't talk through that more. That was very stressful. That was very tedious, and I feel like, I don't know, I just wanted to get on and do it. But I have done the D-shaped moss pole. It's like a beefy pole. I don't know if you can tell from there, but you'll be able to see when I stand it up. And now I want to repot the plant. So I want to find a pot, maybe like a 15 centimetre pot or something like that. Ideally something that I've got quite a weighty ceramic pot to go with, and I don't know if I've got any that big actually. I'm going to have a quick look. So yeah, this is going to be quite heavy now, and I want to make sure it's not going to fall over. It needs a heavy base. So I think I found something that should actually, actually, is this going to account for the size of the moss pole? That's the thing I didn't think about. But in theory, I think this should be better. That's a nice weighty pot. Oh, I think it needs to be bigger. Actually, looking at it next to this. Try it on its side. It's going to be too small. Okay, the big weighty pot may have to wait. Okay, this is not a permanent solution, but I've got this pot, which I think is going to be the right size. This is much bigger. My God, this is a massive step up compared to what it was in before. And I've got this pot that's very heavy, and that just about pushes into it. So I think it will be enough of a base for it for the time being. And then I can replace it with something the next time I go to a garden centre. In fact, I'm trying to challenge myself to drive more by driving to garden centres, and I was gonna do that yesterday and I didn't. I could do it today, but the thought of it freaks me out. Maybe I'll do it. There's a really nice garden centre about 40 minutes away, and I've never driven there all by myself, and I thought that it would be just a good challenge and a good way to kind of get me driving again. So far I've only driven to garden centres by myself pretty much. But I feel like it's just a good way to get my confidence up, because I learnt to drive quite, well, I mean, when I say late, not actually late, but bearing in mind all of my friends were learning to drive in their late teens. I didn't start driving lessons until I was 22, I don't think. Also, let me just change the camera angle so you can see what I'm doing better. Yeah, as I was saying, I didn't learn to drive until, or start learning to drive, sorry, until I was about 22. And I passed my test first go, which was a shock because I did not think I was going to pass. But since then, and I said this about 3 or 4 months ago, I swear, in a video, and I just haven't done much more driving since then. But since that point, I hadn't got back in the driver's seat for kind of like 8 years. By the way, I'm just using Soil Ninja's base mix with some chunky orchid bark as well because they like quite a chunky mix. So yeah, I've only really been starting to drive Ross's car again in the last few months, and my confidence is just not where it used to be. I think you just get so out of practice. And although when I was initially learning to drive, I didn't find it scary, I now find it quite scary just because of the amount of time that's passed. So yeah, I thought just like taking myself for drives to places where I know that I'm going to have a really great time and I can get excited about the thing that I'm going to instead of the drive itself was probably the best way to do it. And so yeah, as I say, currently the only place I've driven myself to by myself is garden centres. So yeah, the one, as I say, that's about 45 minutes away, that is going to be the next challenge for me. Whether or not I do it today, I will do it. Okay, so... And as you can see, I haven't actually pre-mixed the bark into the soil. I'm just kind of alternating layers of base mix and orchid bark just to save using another mixing bowl. And I'm just going to fill the soil to where the moss starts at the bottom of the moss pole so that we don't have loads of moss in the soil mix, because that obviously makes it much more prone to rotting. Okay, perfect. Now let's see if the weighty pot will help keep it secure for the time being and trim back the cable ties. Look how chunky that pole is. That is so much better than it was before. But as you can see, the plant is kind of growing off to the side, but I do think if I'm kind of, I don't know, if I just start trying to train it to go back over the other way, I hopefully should be able to keep it in one place without having to operate again. And the pot does seem to be doing its job. Obviously it's not ideal, and I mean, I'm gonna have to make sure it's well out of the way of where Joli can brush past it so that it doesn't... Oh my goodness, you're kidding. I've just noticed that it's cracking, and I think it might be cracking because I just put this pot in it. Can you see there? There's a big crack running all the way down the side. Okay, maybe I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say that was already there. I don't think it was, but it's all I've got for the time being, so I'm just going to have to move it very carefully. Oh yeah, that moss pole. This is why you need the heavy pot, because that is now a very heavy moss pole. Ooh, and I haven't even hydrated it yet, which is what I'm just about to do. See, I'm going to give this moss pole a nice drenching. And then give this plant a good water through, so that hopefully it's able to hold it even more securely. and then hurry up and find myself a big heavy pot. I went charity shopping a few days ago and I found some amazing pots. Sadly, none as big as I need them today, but I found so much stuff that was amazing for plants and would have usually cost me probably about £100 or more, and it cost me less than 20. I got some gorgeous ceramic pots, I got some lovely containers for semi-hydro, and it's just made me think that I definitely want to be thrifting as much as I can this year. Because yeah, plant supplies are so expensive on the whole. And I was saying as well, obviously I do make a lot of my own plant pots and they're perfect for my hanging plants and plants that don't need quite such a solid base, like plants that aren't so weighty. But for heavy ones like this, you do need a solid base. And I think this has been proven very much recently when my variegated euphorbia fell over, because that is in a handmade pot that is pretty much just lightweight plastic. And I know that it wouldn't have happened if it had a more solid base. So yeah, but as I said, for the time being, that does seem to be doing the trick in that pot. So I'm gonna probably keep this plant. Although it's not particularly practical, I'm gonna have to just keep it in the middle of the living room. Just because I want to try and keep it isolated, because I've just done the pest treatment. Even though I don't particularly think it was pesty. Okay, you know what? For now, it can just stay here and I'll figure out where it goes later. When I was giving my alocasia Jacqueline a wipe down yesterday, I decided to repot it in the end just to give it a little bit more room. And I came across some corms, and my alocasia Jacqueline has never given me corms before. And I don't know if these are actually going to do anything at all, because look how small and dark they are. I was wondering anyone that's grown the alocasia Jacqueline from a corm could let me know about this, because as I say, they're nothing like the kind of corms that I typically harvest from other kinds of alocasia. And I've put them in one of these little pots. These are just sauce pots typically that I keep from takeaways, and I just put a little bit of water at the bottom, and that's how I get them to sprout. And I just have a feeling these might rot. I don't know why, I think because they just look very dead. And I wasn't sure if that was normal or not, but I'm giving it a go. But there's a couple of things in my cabinet. Ooh, oh my God, my cabinet that has suddenly got full again, that I wanted to take a look at and deal with. The first one that is on my list is my Alocasia Regal Shield. Whoa, and oh my goodness, this one is sizing up so quickly. I got this as a teeny tiny baby plant about 8 months ago, and honestly it was like you could hold it in the palm of your hand. It was in like a 5 centimeter pot. It was teeny tiny, and now this one's getting really big, and I've pot upgraded it several times and it just keeps going. So I think it's probably time it came out of the cabinet. Where it's gonna go, I don't know. I honestly don't know, but yeah, I've got it in semi-hydro, and its reservoir is pretty much always bone dry because look how many roots it's got. And I can also see fungus gnats in here. And this, I was talking about this in a Patreon video the other day. This is a common misconception. People say that if you use semi-hydro, then you can't get fungus gnats. Fungus gnats will not breed in there. And although it is much harder for fungus gnats to breed in a non-organic substrate, it is absolutely possible. I have had fungus gnats in my semi-hydro, and yeah, as you can see, there are some just around the bottom. Not awful, but not a great. So I think first things first, I'm gonna rinse off the semi-hydro that's here, and then probably take this plant, or maybe take it through to the shower and give its roots a spray down. Yeah, I think that's probably the sensible thing to do. But then the other thing that I was keen to have a look at in here, because I haven't looked at this since the last time I showed you it in a video. But my Philodendron esmeraldense, I'm really here for those of you that are following the journey with this one, because I am so excited. Very quick brief if you haven't seen this plant before. Philodendron esmeraldense, I got this plant, big beautiful cutting for my birthday, and it rotted almost immediately. The node completely rotted, and I was like, there's no way that is giving me roots. Like, there's nothing I can do. I'm not getting that plant back. And then very randomly, despite not having any roots, it started to give me a little bit of new growth, which has actually turned into a teeny tiny leaf now, which is crazy. And some of you have said that apparently this is quite common, and what typically happens is the leaf will, and I just think this is, I mean, nature is amazing, isn't it? But the leaf will just keep growing despite the fact it's not, as I say, this isn't able to kind of absorb nutrients at the moment. It doesn't have any form of root system. The leaf will keep growing until it's at the point where the new node it creates for itself on that little petiole will then be able to root. Isn't that just insane? I find that so crazily clever. So yeah, I've just got it in, I mean, the exact same container I had it in when it was a big full leaf. And I'm so hoping that this is gonna sprout and it's gonna give me lovely growth. And I was so close to giving up with this plant. So close. Like, I literally said, I was like, I'm gonna put it back in my cabinet just for the sake of putting it back, but I know that nothing's gonna happen with it. So this is very, very exciting for me, and it's one that I will 100% continue to keep you updated with. And I have got more stuff in my cabinet that I could be getting on with and things I could be dealing with. But I think initially I'm gonna stick to my list, attempt to stick to my list, and I'm gonna, I also really need to fix that door. I'm gonna deal with my Alocasia Regal Shield, because I think it's gonna be a little bit more finicky than I thought, because there are pests involved. So I've brought my Regal Shield straight through to the bath, and what I'm gonna do, I thought I'd just try and contain everything in this room if I possibly can, because I have very recently gone through and treated most of my collection using nematodes for fungus gnats. I don't particularly want to be doing it again anytime soon, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to attempt to empty as much of the semi-hydro into the sieve as I possibly can, and then give it a really good rinse through. As I say, then it will give me a chance to kind of shower the roots off and everything. And what I can then do is I can boil up the semi-hydro, and then I can reuse it on another plant, because it will then be sterile. But for the time being, then I can just make sure that things stay good with this plant. I'm actually looking at those roots at the bottom. Oh, I just dropped some hydro. Looking at those roots at the bottom, I'm almost thinking I might have to cut this one out. I'm just going to grab my scissors. I mean, it's going to just be so much easier if I just get in here and do it this way. Obviously not when the shower's actually on. And I've said it before, but actually sometimes giving the roots of your plant a prune back is actually a very good thing, and it can help to encourage new growth. So although those are some really lovely roots it's got, I know how quickly this plant grows, and I know how quickly its roots grow because I have repotted it so many times recently. So I am just going to trim pretty much all of the ones we can see here back. And I'm giving this pot a really good squeeze, trying to get it out, and it's not budging. It's another very weird corm from this Alocasia. Let me hold it a bit closer so you can see. Look at that, isn't that bizarre? Yeah, I guess I'll try rooting that one in the same way as the Jacqueline corm. Two types of Alocasia with, as I say, very unconventional corms from what I have encountered in the past. Oh, there we go. Okay. my God, these roots are ridiculous. I mean, the semi-hydro is literally just staying put. I think that says it all. And bearing in mind, I only repotted this one a couple of months ago. Right, okay, so this leaf here, this is its oldest leaf, sorry, and I can tell it is getting ready to die off, so I'm just going to take that off. And then I'm just going to shower all of this through and attempt to get as much of the semi-hydro off the roots as possible, and then, as I say, give this a good rinse, put it to one side and boil it up. Oh, an important thing to say as well, some of you have also made me aware that apparently you've washed semi-hydro through indoors before and it's blocked your pipes. This is something I actually didn't think of, but I did some Googling after I saw those comments and I was like, oh my God, I was like, yeah, it is a very good idea to be careful. I've washed all of my semi-hydro that I'm using here through already. I must confess I did do it indoors. I shouldn't have done, but at that point I didn't know. So far the pipes are fine, but from now on, if I'm washing it through just purely to rinse the dust off it, I will 100% be doing that outdoors. Finding bigger, more well-established corms as I'm going through as well. So, oh wow, that was a really good catch. I just dropped it and caught it again. That is typically, little focus, more like the standard allocation corm that I am used to encountering. Wow. My God, I'm not going to have room for all of these. These are definitely going to be plant swap things. Oh my goodness, there's loads of them. Okay, so pretty much all of what I've got here now is just roots. I've got a few little bits of semi-hydro, but as I say, it's not organic matter. I'm not too worried about those little bits just there. But look at those roots, they are so beefy. And these are the corms that I found. So I've got 4 what will be, I mean, I'm not actually sure that even is a corm, I don't know. But I'll give it a go. But 4 what should turn into lovely big plants there. But yeah, let's go find a pot for this one and figure out how I'm going to grow it and where. So ideally what I need for this plant is a really tall tower pot, kind of like what it was just in, but even bigger and taller, just because with every new leaf it gives more and more aerial roots at the top here, and I'd like to allow enough space in the pot to be able to kind of fill it up a little bit. And I don't currently have any tower pots that would be the right size for this one, but I thought I'd just show you a DIY thing that I did yesterday. As I say, I did repot my alocasia Jacqueline, and I again didn't have a tall enough tower pot, so I used the same acetate sheeting as I used for the back of the moss pole, and I've basically just filled that with semi-hydro, put it inside a pot, and now I can just fill it and fill it and fill it with semi-hydro as the plant needs, so it will end up in something that could potentially come up to there if need be. And I just thought that was potentially quite a good idea for alocasia, because you can chop them back, but if you're looking to achieve really big, healthy, full growth, being able to support that newer, those newer sections of aerial roots is very important. So I would do something similar for this plant. However, I've gone and used all my acetate this morning for the Philodendron Splendid. So I'm gonna make do with what I've got for the time being. But I think I may need to hop on Amazon shortly and do a little order. But yeah, okay, let's see what we've got. So something I found over in the cupboard of chaos is this old coffee tub, glass jar. And I think, I mean, depth-wise, that's definitely going to give it enough room for now and some. I think this would probably keep it happy for the next kind of 4 or 5 months. That might be overly ambitious, but I feel like it would do okay in there for the time being. And it does also have a fairly wide top, because sometimes you can get jars and they've got a really small top, and although they might fit in, you might not be able to get them out again when their roots have spread. But I think this would probably do the trick. It's kind of my only option, unless I want to go with a really ginormous pot, like width-wise as well. And I don't. So yeah, I think we can make this work. And I think I will just come down and do this on the floor again. It feels really bizarre actually. I mean, obviously Ross has only lived here for a couple of months and he wasn't here before, so really it shouldn't feel strange that he's not here. But I think just because he works from home as well, we've got used to being with each other all the time a lot. So it feels bizarre that he's not here, but it feels so weird that Joli's not here. So strange, because usually if I was down here on the floor doing stuff, I mean, half the time when I film a video, she's wanting to get involved and come and see what's going on. So yeah, it feels very quiet. But I've got to say though, it is really quite nice to just be able to like, I don't know, like I love my own space so much. And like, I think for me anyway, as I've got older, I definitely appreciate my own space way more than I think I used to. And it's not that, believe me, it's not that I don't absolutely adore having both Joli and Ross in the house with me, because I do, it's the best. But it also just kind of makes you appreciate a little bit of stillness when it's just you. It feels nice to just have my energy in here today, and I feel like I'm not moving at a million miles an hour, and if I don't get through loads and loads and loads of things today, I don't really care. I feel like I'm doing things thoroughly. And sometimes even if I get loads ticked off my list in a video, I might not feel like I've done it in, I don't know, the most, not precise way, but I think, yeah, I think thorough is a good way of describing it. But so far I feel like I'm happy with what is being done. And I'm hoping I won't need to break this jar when the time comes. But if I do, it's not the end of the world. Fabulous, cool. So I think I'm probably just gonna have to try and find space for this one on one of my bamboo shelves that I put up the other day. The bamboo shelves that are already full. I've had oh my God, I was gonna say as well, I've had so many of you send through links to different kinds of shelving and storage ideas that you would recommend. And honestly, thank you so much. It is so useful. I've looked at every single one of them and I'm weighing up options at the moment. I love what I did in the video the other day, and I think practically it works, but it's not a long-term solution. So yeah, thank you so much for sending things across. Feel free to continue to send things my way. It's always really useful to know what's working for you. But yeah, for the time being, even if these have to go on the floor, yeah, it might have to go on the floor for a bit. But yeah, for the time being, I'm sure this will be fine. And it's actually fairly sturdy as well. I was going to say knockability with Joli, but I think it should be okay. And I'll just fill its reservoir to about there, and I can just monitor it nicely that way. So yeah, I've put it just there for the time being. Obviously that's not ideal when I was trying to clear a walkway, but just until I get some more shelves, I feel like that's probably going to be a good option. And also, oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing, but that's the rug is still outside. I swear to God, the rug is frozen solid about 3 times now, and I'm not sure there's any bringing it back. It's something that I really need to do, and I don't know why I'm just putting it off. But yeah, that's where that plan's staying for the time being. And also, to be honest, I may as well, the bedroom is a little bit messy and I do apologise. It's mainly my fault. In fact, all the laundry on the floor here is 100% my fault, but I thought I would just give you some plant updatey things in here because I haven't been, I don't typically film in this room much anymore. Also, if you're wondering why there is a mannequin just there, me and Ross are getting ready for the next Comic-Con, and bless him, he bought me a mannequin for Christmas so that I could make my costume. But yeah, so it's a little bit like plant chaos in here at the moment. I have had a pretty major clear out of plants in this room just because I do find it quite hard to stay on top of plants in this room. I've had lots of drama. There's so much organising to be done in here as well. But I'm in the process of clearing out this cabinet and essentially kind of restarting it. Like, this was my rehabilitation plants with issues cabinet. And oh boy, have I had a lot of issues in here. Hence why it's incredibly empty at the moment. And I've got things in here. In fact, this Anthurium clarinervium is absolutely riddled with thrips. Fortunately, and I don't know how, nothing else on the bottom level seemed to be affected. I am keeping everything else that was in there in very strict isolation, but I do find it bizarre that that's been affected so badly. So yeah, that's something I absolutely need to do. That will just be the case of getting it in the shower, changing out its soil, and then pest treating it like I did with my Philodendron Splendid at the beginning of this video. And then my prop station, that hasn't changed that much. I have started my new prop box, which I started in a video last week. And sadly, I can see that my Susie Q cuttings, some of them are starting to yellow and they're not rooting. So yeah, I probably need to get them out in the next few days just so that they don't start to rot. But on the whole, bar a couple of things, most stuff there is looking okay. I've had some deaths just here. They were alocasia green shield babies that were giving me leaves before Christmas and are actually destined for the bin now because they're not coming back. But apart from that, most things are okay. And my Philodendron Kerala hybrid, this one I did chop up. This is another one that was in the cabinet of doom. I lost a lot of leaves on it, but look at these aerial roots. Aren't they insane? So yeah, I think I'm gonna chop most of these sections up into wet sticks and then get these ones going in sphagnum moss. And in fact, I could do that now. Okay, that's not actually on my list, so I will do that shortly. But something that is on my list is this one, and this is my Philodendron El Choco Red, and I'm very, very, very sad about this because it was doing beautifully for me. And not that I'm blaming illness over Christmas on everything, but I am a little bit. That one was fine before Christmas, and then when I went back to check on it, it basically was infested with spider mites. I treated it once and I was not keeping a close enough eye on that plant because I wasn't well, and they came back and I basically was just like, you know what, chop it back and start again. It only had a few leaves anyway, so it doesn't feel like the worst thing in the world. But what I'm gonna do with this one is I'm going to take out its soil mix, I'm going to throw it away, and I'm going to get it into semi-hydro just because I want to make sure that there's no spider mites left in the vicinity. So yeah, I am, as I say, just going to bin this soil. And sometimes, if there haven't been any pest issues and the soil's relatively new and still has a lot of nutritional value, nutrient content, you know what I mean, then I will hang on to the soil and I will reuse it. But for this plant, seeing as the spider mites have been so bad and it has been potted in this since I got it, I'm not worried about losing it. So yeah, I'm going to get as much of this off as I possibly can, and then I'm just going to give the roots a little rinse. And to be honest, the roots look some of the roots look really fine. When I say really fine, I mean really okay, like they look absolutely fine. And others are looking not sludgy. I'm trying to actually tell if it is just soil, just not as full as they could be. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to just carry on rinsing them for a minute just to see whether or not I need to do a chop. Right, so I think if I was to pot these, sorry, this is also the worst light. If I was to pot these, where can you see? There we go. Is that better? If I was to pot this straight back up in semi-hydro, I think it would be okay. But considering, like, that's what I'm left with of the plant, I feel like I'm going to start it from scratch. And when I say start it from scratch, I mean give it a really big roots prune and probably get it into sphagnum moss. Yeah, I feel like that's the right thing to do, because the last thing I want is for this section down here to rot. Cool, let's do that. Also, I'm going to give this pot a really good wash, just in case, again, there's any spider mitey issues lurking in it. So I've got this little container, and I think that will be perfect for this plant. It's nice and deep, and obviously it has got a big section of stem there, so even though I'm going to give the roots a chop back, it should have lots of points from which it can root. It's always just better safe than sorry, isn't it, with stuff like this? This is a plant that I wanted for such a long time, and to be completely honest, it's one that I haven't appreciated, and I haven't properly appreciated, and I haven't given the time for last year. And like I know I am continuing to bang on about the fact that I think I went a little bit too far plant-wise last year, but I really did get myself very, very overwhelmed. And I've started this year with a freaking massive reset. And I've got rid of some things, and I've just kind of had a clear out of my collection and potted duplicates up together and stuff like that. And everything is feeling so much more manageable. Genuinely, so like, because I definitely feel like I had plant burnout. I just didn't know, like, I don't know, I felt like I had to kind of push through for the sake of it, which is obviously never a good thing to do. So I would 100% encourage you guys, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed with plant stuff, or you feel like there's loads of issues that are just going unnoticed, or you don't have time to deal with everything, honestly, I would encourage you to have a little downsize, even if it's temporary, because it has just made me feel so much better, and it's made everything about my plant care more enjoyable so far. And I know it's early days, but like, maybe I need to write this down so that I can continue to remind myself of it if the time comes where I feel it's a bit too much again, because yeah, this is a plant that I wanted for ages, such a long time, and I feel like I still want the plant, because I doesn't feel like I've got it at the moment, but I feel like once I get it back to a good, healthy state now, I will be able to enjoy and appreciate it, because things will be a little bit more manageable. That is the hope. But yeah, I'm also kind of, I don't know when I'm going to do it. I was going to do it at the end of last year. And then I was like, maybe I'll do it at the beginning of January. But I am at some point soon going to do another full houseplant tour, because it's been a year since I last did my other one. And I feel like those of you that maybe don't watch my videos all the time will 100% see a very big change in my plant collection. And part of me, I don't know how many in total. I don't even know how many I've got. I've no idea how many plants I've got at the moment, but I would think between 250 and 300, I would say. But bearing in mind, I am still going through and combining plants, and I've got a few listed on local Facebook marketplace groups and stuff like that. I think it should feel much less cluttered than it did before. Not that it felt cluttered before, but like I had such a big tidy up before I filmed that so that it wouldn't feel cluttered. Everything just feels better when you've got time to do it, doesn't it? So I've taken all of the roots off that side, and I've left a few that look pretty healthy on this side. Oh my goodness, why is the light just so awful today? It's just winter weather, isn't it? But I'm happy with that. And obviously with a transparent container, I will be able to monitor it closely as well. So yeah, as I say, I could propagate. I mean, I say propagate, it's got a bit of a root system on it. I could get it started. In fact, I could get it started in semi-hydro, but sphagnum moss does tend to be my go-to for philodendron. So as always, I'm going with my gut. And part of me is now thinking in my mind, I'm like, should I now go and change again because I've just handled a plant that had spider mites? I mean, to be honest, I'm gonna say, I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested. What would you guys do? Bearing in mind, I don't think I've come into contact with any spider mites. I chopped off the foliage a few days ago, so like that was the bit that contained the spider mites. As far as I could see, the stem didn't have any on, and I've just literally taken it from here to the sink and I've washed my hands. I feel like getting changed again is excessive, but would you do that? Should I do that? I don't know. Okay, so that is my El Choco Red currently. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get a sandwich bag like this. I'm going to fill a little reservoir first, just to keep the moss hydrated. And then I have actually got a small, I say isolation zone, isolation area that I've set up for my philodendron silver sword and my Hoya Louis Bois, because one had thrips or spider mites, and the Hoya had mealybugs. But yeah, I know this is going to be a little bit wobbly because I have just got you on the tripod. But if you come with me over here, down there you can see the things in bags. That is the little isolation zone that I've currently got going on. And I'm going to pop the El Choco Red down there with that as well. And I'll keep an eye on it. And hopefully soon I will have some new growth. Oh my goodness, I just did a classic Claire and got myself ridiculously distracted. I finished filming over there, I cleaned up, I debated changing all my clothes, and I thought, to be honest, it's only really my hands that have come into contact with stuff, so I've just given my hands and my arms a really good wash. And then I got my list, and I've been kind of wandering around, picking up plants, kind of putting things on my list, ticking things off my list. I've just ticked off a few things that I did this morning. And then I started to notice more and more things that could potentially go on the list. So I decided to just make a really, really, really long list, and then just started procrastinating about that. And then I started doodling, and then I realized that I was in the middle of doing stuff. So here we are again. But I brought a couple of things over to give you an update on first, and then there's some things that I want to do to them. So I'll talk you through a little bit, give you a couple of updates. But also, I just want to say, I am really proud of myself so far this year. I started my list, and already, as you can see, I've ticked so many things off. So many things. And this, for me, is just a really good way of doing things. And I said that, oh my God, my voice. I said this the other day, I think it was in a Patreon video, that I I'm so good, like I'm so good at noticing things with my plants and recognizing that things need to be done, but then actually finding the time to get around and actually do them can be really difficult. And I think that's just because unless I have a visual reminder of things, they often just kind of fall to the back of the list. And if I don't deal with them there and then I find it hard to get around them again. So actually putting it down on paper has been so good for me. So if you're anything like me, or if you've got ADHD, then I would highly, highly, highly recommend doing it this way, because so far it has worked wonders for me. But we will get onto things on the list in a second. But the first plant I brought over to give you an update on is one that I haven't spoken about in a really, really, really long time. And I feel like you'll be able to notice quite a difference in growth since the last time I showed you her. But it is the Philodendron tortum. And I know this is one that really kind of divides a lot of people in the plant community. I think it's a bit of a Marmite plant. You either love it or hate it. As I've said so many times before in videos, I'm massive on texture in plants, and I just think this one is so cool, and I absolutely adore it, and I'm really glad that it's doing well for me. But the reason I brought it over to show you it is because it started doing something a bit weird. Like, so far in its growth structure, it has been quite predictable, and it suddenly, in the last couple of weeks, sent out this shoot that I don't know quite what it's doing, because the plant's never done it for me before. At first I was like, is it trying to flower? And I was like, no, it looks like it's coming directly from the main stem. And I'm now wondering if maybe it's just that the plant isn't getting enough light, and maybe it's just like sending out a runner. I'm not sure. It's over by, in fact, where I just filmed the last bit, it's over in my kitchen area, which is I guess it's a relatively low light spot, but the plant has been in that spot pretty much since I moved in, and it's been fine. So yeah, if any of you've got any theories as to what's going on here or why this is happening, please let me know. The plant looks fine otherwise. It looks pest free, and up until recently it has been giving me really good growth as well. And also I've just noticed on the runner, I'm pretty sure that little thing sticking out of it, don't know if the camera will focus because it is so small, but I'm pretty sure that is a teeny tiny little leaf just there. Yeah, I don't think the camera's going to be able to pick that up. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on. So I thought I'd throw the update out there, and if any of you have had similar experiences with this plant or know what's going on, as I say, please let me know. But then the other thing I thought I would just do a little update on, I know it's very early days with this one, but in the second video I filmed this year where Joli knocked over a load of stuff, I propagated this little bit of my euphorbia, my variegated euphorbia ingens, and I just think that is so adorable. Like, I'm not glad that this has happened, but I'm excited to be experimenting propagating this plant for the first time, because I've always been way too scared to chop my variegated euphorbia. So the fact that this bit broke off, I think was kind of a blessing in disguise. But yeah, I let it callus over for about 5 days after filming that, after it happened. And then I've just potted it up in a really gritty soil mix, and I'm really hoping it's going to just give me beautiful growth from here. And as I say, it is very early days, and I don't want to like take it out and check or anything, because if it does have any root at all, which it probably won't yet, they will be very small and I don't want to damage them. But it feels like I'm just giving it a little poke. It feels fairly solid in the soil. I think I want it to feel fairly solid in the soil. I think I'm just being really eager with this plant because I just want it to do well. But yeah, it's exciting me, and I think it just looks adorable in that little pot. And I've got it next to the big one as well. And it's like a little mother and a little baby, and it's making me very happy. But on the note of euphorbias, one that I thought I was going to say give you an update on, but introduce you to on my channel, is a new one that I've just added to my collection, and it's one that I have had my eye on for a while. I included it in what I thought the It plants of 2024 were going to be, and it is a Euphorbia lactea white ghost. And I just want to take a moment and say thank you, because this was sent to me by one of you guys, and I am honestly so blown away / just really overwhelmed, and I honestly can't think of a better word than grateful. But yeah, thank you so much for thinking of me, and thank you so much for sending this, because I love it so much. So this person very kindly sent a rooted section, which you can see potted up here. And they also sent an unrooted section. And this is almost pure white. It's so beautiful. And Emma actually took these cuttings. They were sent to her and then I met up with Emma and then Emma gave them to me. And when I got them home, this one had kind of shriveled a little bit at the end where it had been cut, and I wasn't quite sure whether I should go ahead and pot it up. It didn't look kind of like it had calloused over hard. It looked a little bit squishy. So I thought I would just make another clean cut just to make sure that it wasn't going to rot. And I did that a few days ago. And as you can see, the end of it, it still isn't as clean as I'd like it to be. Like typically in the past when I've cut my euphorbias, they kind of, I don't know, they don't shrivel quite this much. And I'm wondering if it's anything to do with the fact that the plant is so highly variegated. I'm not sure, but I think I could chop it back further, but I think I'm gonna pot it up today and just monitor it and see how it goes, because as I say, I have cut it once already. I've already lost about that much more length on the plant. And I'd like to get it going if I possibly can. And I am going to keep them as separate plants until they've fully rooted, and then I probably will pot them up together. But yeah, I'm really, really, really excited about this one. And then another one that I'm very excited about is my Philodendron gigas. And this is another plant swap one that I got at the last plant swap. I have been looking at this plant for the last few weeks. It's giving me beautiful growth now, and I've been thinking, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? And I think it is finally time, from looking at the roots, from what I can see I can't see very well, but from what I can see, I think this one is ready to be potted up and got onto a moss pole, which is super exciting because oh my God, this plant is just one of the plants in my collection that I'm like, I don't know, I just can't wait to see what it does for me this year. So the fact that I can move it on to its next stage of life is incredibly exciting. And I'm actually, I know I was saying I'm loving working on the floor, but I'm not going to do this on the floor because I feel like most of the things I want to do here are fairly small, kind of finicky things. So I'm gonna set up at the table and then we can get on with these. Oh, and also I've got a couple of other things that I've also taken out of my cabinet that are on my list, but I'll talk you through them when we get to them. So I'm gonna start with the Euphorbia Lactea White Ghost. And as I say, I really am keeping everything crossed for this section because I haven't seen a Euphorbia callus quite in this way before. My fear is that it's just gonna rot, but as I say, I've got one gorgeous healthy section already, and I think I'm just going to have to very closely monitor this one. So what I've done is I've just put some sand in there, and I'm just going to put a scoop of normal houseplant potting base mix in with it. I don't have any succulent potting mix at the moment, so that's typically what I do, or I just mix through a little bit of semi-hydro mix or something like that. But obviously just having sand or grit or something like that along with the base mix just helps to make sure that succulents are able to properly drain, because more often than not, issues tend to arise because they don't have adequate drainage or because the soil just kind of holds too much moisture and they end up rotting that way. So yes, that is what I'm gonna do. And I think I'm probably gonna start it, in fact, since I'm thinking actually something like that kind of pot size is probably gonna be ideal for this plant, just because again, I don't want, seeing as it's not got any roots at the moment and it's going to have a very small root system at first, I don't want it to be overwhelmed in the soil mix. So yeah, I've just mixed a little bit through, and it's just a very, very gritty mix. And that's what it is looking like. But yeah, honestly, I cannot believe that I own this plant. I've been looking at the one that's potted, I've been looking at that pretty much every single day. And I just can't wait to see what it does for me. And honestly, I will say it time and time and time and time again, people in the plant community are just so wonderful and so kind. Like, I honestly, I cannot thank your kindness enough. So yeah, this has made the start to my year much better. I've acquired a few new plants already this year, 7 to be precise. Small ones on the whole, but I have acquired a few new ones. Again, I spoke about that on Patreon, but I am trying to be better this year. But if it's a gift, you're not going to turn down a gift, are you? So yes. Anyway, that is what it's looking like. I'm just going to give this a water through after I finish filming, and I'll pop it probably in the same spot as all of my euphorbias, in the window just next to me, because that does get very gentle sunlight. And yeah, just keep an eye on it. I mean, ideally in the next week or so, I would see this really kind of plumpening up and filling out, because as you can see, it's a little bit, I mean, actually those bits are better. If you look at that side, it's a little bit dehydrated at the moment. It's a little bit squidgy. And what I want to look for to make sure that it isn't going to rot is that the bottom of the plant isn't going squidgy or turning brown. So I will have to keep a very close eye on that, because if it is, then I'm going to need to make a much higher chop to make sure the rot doesn't spread up. Oh, and then, okay, let's do, I was going to say, I've got two that I've just taken out of my cabinet that I need to look at, but let's do the exciting one first. Let's do the Philodendron gigas, because I can't wait to get this one growing. I've said it in other videos, but it's very similar looking in terms of how kind of dark and dramatic it is to the melanochrysum. And that's a philodendron that previously I haven't had that much luck with. The main issue for me with that plant has been, I also just rehydrated its moss, has been pests. And it's something that I've never really been able to kind of get round. And again, maybe that is just because up until recently, I mean, actually, no, I was gonna say maybe because I've been kind of a little bit plant burnouty and I've overwhelmed myself a bit, but I first got the melanochrysum about 4 years ago, and my collection was much smaller then. I think it's just a plant that naturally, for whatever reason, I don't particularly get on well with. However, although this has only been a few months, the gigas so far has given me no grief. It's been one that I've been really excited by. Oh, and yeah, it's got a lovely root system. But yeah, it's one that I'm super, 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 I'm using the word excited all the time, I know. But I'm super excited to get growing on a moss pole, because I just can't wait to see what this plant does. So yeah, and I've got two sections here, both of which are giving me really gorgeous growth and very sizable growth as well, considering that these weren't top cuttings. These are just like mid-cut wet stick cuttings. And sometimes when you get cuttings like that, the new growth can be really quite tiny for a while. And as I say, this is very mature growth. So I feel like it's one that is probably going to size up quite quickly. So I'm just trying to get as much of the moss off the roots as I can. The only thing about putting plants onto moss poles is just that the moss poles take up so much space. I'm really running a little bit low on space. I know I've spoken about shelves, and me and Ross actually last night we were having a big chat about like how we could change things up plant wise, how we could optimize space, because I know I've got like my hanging rail going all the way around the top, and that is amazing for my hanging plants. But obviously, because my flat does have completely sloped ceilings, there's only like, I can only really put freestanding shelves in the middle of the room. Like there's no other wall space to put any shelves whatsoever. And so yeah, I think I'm gonna have to get a little bit more creative this year. I sometimes think back to when I had all my plants in my mum's conservatory, and although I managed to squeeze a lot of plants into a very small space there, I mean a very small space, considering the amount of plants, a very small space, it was a beautiful conservatory. But if I was to go back and I was to start doing that again now with that space, oh my God, I think about the shelving units I'd get there and how I would just kind of really, really optimize it from ground to ceiling height, because I feel like I didn't bring out the best potential in that space. My goal one day at some point is to have another gorgeous conservatory like that. I mean, probably not as big as that. I think that's a bit unrealistic, but I would just love to have a conservatory / sunroom space to be able to grow some of my plants. And I know that is such a luxury, and I know most houses don't come with that. But like 100%. I mean, when I was looking for this flat, one of my main priorities was obviously that it had pretty good light because I've got so many plants. And it does, I think the more plants you acquire, it does become like, it becomes a necessity as you're looking for places to live, because you come with a family and your family has plants. So yeah, if at some point I could find a place for the conservatory, that would be just amazing. I also do absolutely find that for me, and again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, I know I have said this recently, but for me, having most of my plants in one space where I can kind of see them, there's something about that that makes me feel much more on top than having them in loads and loads of different rooms. Like for example here, the bedroom plants are the ones, and hence why I've cleared so much of the bedroom out plant wise, but the bedroom plants are the ones that most often get neglected because I just find it so difficult. I'm sure this is partly an ADHD thing, but I find it so difficult to stay on top of multiple spaces if I can't see them. And I'm in this room most of the time, and therefore I find it much easier on the whole to keep on top of things in this room than I do in other spaces. So yeah, besides the fact that having a conservatory would just be really cool because you get amazing light, I think it would also just help me to feel like I was on top of things. And then I could just put kind of low maintenance plants like pothos plants and certain types of philodendrons and aglaonema and stuff like that. I could put that around. This is me totally manifesting a future house. I've only just got into the flat. But yeah, I would then, I think, probably put lower maintenance plants around the rest of the house and then keep my tropicals and my kind of like more finicky plants in the conservatory. That's the dream, that's the dream. I always look at, in fact, a few people, but Memo, who's Houseplanty Goodness on YouTube, I always look at his sunroom and oh my goodness, the plants he's got in there are incredible. And Becca Della Plants as well, I know she's got a lovely sunroom. Yeah, it's fun to dream, isn't it? Okay, so I've got most of the moss off from around the roots, and that's what I'm left with. And they are very good, very full, very healthy looking root systems. And I've stupidly not completely undone my potting mat. I've just started working on like a little corner of it, which is not particularly practical now that I'm going to be potting up, but let's see how this is going to work. And I have just rehydrated a moss pole that I had in the cupboard, and this is a D-shaped moss pole that I made for my Philodendron nestii that I chopped up recently. So I'm just going to go ahead and reuse this one, and obviously I can extend it as time goes on, but I think this will be a really good one to kind of start this plant off with. And then pot size wise, that's what I didn't bring over. I didn't bring over any pots. So yeah, in terms of the pot size, to fit the moss pole and what are, to be honest, already very decent sized root systems for such a short space of time, I think this is going to be enough. Or do I go a little bit bigger? To be honest, I think I'm going to start, and this is bigger than I would usually go initially, but I think I'm going to start a little bit bigger. I think this is, this is quite a deep pot actually, but I think this is probably about 14 centimetres. But just because obviously this is a big chunky moss pole, I'm actually just going to take a little bit of the moss out of the bottom and fill it up at the top so that it doesn't come into contact with the soil. But yeah, as I say, they've got really substantial root systems already, and they do seem to be fairly fast to grow. So by doing it this way, hopefully it will just mean that I don't have to make any major adjustments in terms of repotting for hopefully at least the next kind of 6 months or so. Obviously if I have to do it, I don't mind doing it, but it's just best to try and let the plants settle and not have to be repotting it all the time. Although from what I can tell so far, and obviously it is really early days with this plant, it feels fairly hardy. And like, maybe that's a silly thing to say because obviously I've only propagated it so far. Also, I'm just gonna fill the bottom of the moss pole with some bark, and then I'm gonna do the same mix as I did for my Philodendron Splendid earlier with orchid bark and base mix. But yeah, it feels like a fairly hardy plant. I think just because often, like, as I say, propagating not just philodendron, but just aroids in general, sometimes the first leaves you get will be, as I say, either very small, or sometimes they're a little bit misshapen and they look a bit weird, and it kind of takes the plant a little while to acclimate. And I just haven't had any of that with this plant. And this one's also been one that was over in Spider Mite Corner. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, if it's anything like the melanochrysum, and bearing in mind, it's also very dark and it's also very velvety, I was like, that one is 100% going to be affected, and it hasn't given me any issues at all. So I'm not like, that could all just be coincidence, but I want to say that it's not. I want to say that it might just be one that's a little bit more suited to my home, but we'll see, we'll see. And again, I'm going to need to try and find a heavy pot to put this one in. I'm sure I've probably got something that would be a little bit more suitable in this size. Oh, this is very heavy. I'm just going to lean it up against the table for now. I was going to say as well, I am just going to remove the cataphyls, which is like the sheath that grows over the leaf, just because I want to try and encourage these leaves into the moss pole. And sometimes, because cataphyls obviously, once a leaf has emerged, they're not needed anymore, they do naturally die off. Sometimes if they start dying off and they're next to a damp organic matter such as sphagnum moss, they can start to rot. And so, especially while this plant adjusts, I'm gonna just take them off. This is so heavy, it's literally just gonna topple, which might make this a little bit fiddly. One of the things that I've got kind of throughout my to-do list is getting Hoyas onto trellises. And I haven't ticked any Hoya trellising off this year at all yet. And I've got some, oh my God, I've also got another one that I saw in the bedroom that has started tendriling round like 6 other plants. So I really need to do that. And I can't find any trellises. I can't find any trellises so far that I actually like. I'm like, I know you can get some kind of cool ones. I mean, by all means, if any of you guys have got trellises that you like using, let me know what they are down in the comments, because I always get inspired by you guys, and it's just the most wonderful thing to know what you do and what works. But none of the ones that I've ever used have really kind of grabbed me. The circle ones are probably my favourite if I had to choose, but I'm not into like the love heart ones, or I don't know. Yeah, I maybe I'll make some. Maybe I'll try making some. I don't know. The other thing I was going to say that I want to try making over, oh God, I know I'm banging on about Patreon. Sorry for those of you that aren't on Patreon, but Over on my Patreon a little while ago, we did a houseplant tour where people sent in their tours and kind of showed us what was going on in their collections, and it was amazing to see some of your plant collections. It was absolutely insane. And one of you, Marianne, you had this amazing like copper spiral thing that you'd made to go around certain plants such as alocasias to like hold them up and make sure that their leaves weren't going out in different directions. And I thought that was such a creative thing to do. And in fact, it's something that I've 100% got on my list to do with some of my alocasias this year, because it just looked so beautiful. And it's such a practical way of doing things as well. But I was wondering if I might be able to take your copper wire idea and use it to create some Hoya trellises as well. I know I've done it with like garden wire before. I think it's just that the ones that I've made, I've never looked at afterwards and been like, oh wow, that makes me love that plant even more. I've just looked at it and gone, oh, I kind of preferred it before I did anything to it. So yeah, that's something that I will probably need to, I say tackle in the next few weeks. They've been tendriling with nothing to climb for long enough now. A few more weeks is not going to make a difference, but I would just like to get it done. Like mentally, ticking things off the list feels really good. So yeah, that's a very roundabout way of me saying, let me know what Hoya trellises you like. But this one is done. And although it looks like a very big moss pole for a very small plant at the moment, I'm confident that as it starts to grow, it's going to fill this pole beautifully. That's what it's currently looking like. So yeah, I will keep you updated with this plant. I'm going to probably, this is another one that I don't know where to put, but it's probably going to stay over by the window for the time being. When I get some more shelves sorted, then yeah, that will hopefully be perfect. But I need to just really create a little bit of space to try and have like a freestanding moss pole section. But yeah, I just need a little bit more space. It's so funny, I find it so funny that I'm saying that, because I know I was complaining for such a long time about not having enough space to do stuff. And now I've got a whole flat and I'm still struggling for space. Anyway, we'll have a think, and I'm definitely going to do some rearranging / reorganising and just trying to get things a little bit more structured in here this year. But these two are two that I took out of my cabinets because both of them need attention. And this is one that I spoke about in my wishlist plants video that I didn't even know was in my collection, and it's a form of the Syngonium chiapense. And I say that I didn't even know it was in my collection because the Syngonium chiapense is a plant that's really high on my wish list. I think it is gorgeous. And this is actually a form of the chiapense, but this is the Syngonium chiapense frosted heart. And from what I've seen online, this one doesn't seem to have the potential to get quite as big. Correct me please if I'm wrong, but doesn't seem to have the potential to get quite as big as the standard chiapense from what I've seen. But it's currently just been a little bit neglected. It's been in my cabinet in a plastic cup. Oh, the bottom of the stem has also rotted, so I'm glad that I checked this. But yeah, I've had it for a while and it hasn't really been doing anything for me, and that's because I have been neglecting it. So just looking at it, I didn't really know what I was going to find. I just thought I should probably change things up for this plant. Yeah, so looking at it, its roots are very, very dry, and I think they'd benefit from a really big prune back, and it has got some amazing aerial roots on the main stem. So what I think I should probably do is kind of like a complete restart and reset with this plant. I think I should probably, similarly to what I did actually with the El Choco Red earlier, I think I should give its roots a really good trim back and maybe get it into sphagnum moss and start again and submerge the upper aerial roots and just give this plant a little bit more love and attention, because I haven't been doing that so far. Where have I put my scissors again? Oh my goodness, I'm losing everything. And depending on what I find with the next plant that I want to look at as well, I have a feeling I might be doing a fairly similar thing to what I'm doing here. But yeah, as I say, I feel like there's so many plants that I just have not been giving my full attention to. And this one, for example, has been so overlooked in my collection. And I feel really sorry for this plant, because considering how resilient so many houseplants are, and even like what I was saying earlier about the Philodendron esmeraldense, how it's creating a new node for itself with no roots, which is just insane. Plants just want to live and survive and grow, and sometimes we as their owners inhibit that, and I've definitely been doing that with this plant, which is so sad because it is a wish list plant for me. So this year I'm determined to grow this plant beautifully, and I'm gonna hopefully look back on this video and be like, do you remember the day you restarted that plant? I hope that is the case. But yeah, so what I've done is I've just chopped pretty much all of its main roots back. I've got all the dead bits off, and that is what I'm left with. Not a huge amount, but I am gonna get this one into sphagnum moss. And in fact, I think I'm probably just gonna go straight in with the cup that I just had my Philodendron gigas in. I know sometimes I say you should wash containers out and stuff like that. You kind of should, but at the same time, that isn't a plant that's been affected by pests in any way, and it's only been propagating for quite a short amount of time. So I'm changing out the moss. Maybe I should be doing things differently. Should I be doing things differently? Because I know, like, obviously I know you absolutely should be vigilant with things in your plant collection to stop things from spreading and to make sure you're keeping your collection healthy. But then I also do just think you can go a little bit over the top. And maybe for some people there's no such thing as going over the top, and that's totally fine. But like, there's some people that I see and they like sterilize every single pot in between use, and even when there's been no pests, and I kind of think like, is that necessary? I don't know, what do you guys do out of interest? I would be very interested to know. But yeah, and also if you've got the Syngonium chiapense or the Syngonium chiapense frosted heart, please let me know how you're growing yours as well, because I have not so far taken the time to really learn about this plant, and so I'm learning purely at the moment from speaking to you guys and kind of looking at yours and seeing what you're doing. And I am, like, I would say as a grower, as a plant parent, pretty experienced with Syngoniums. I used to have a lot of Syngoniums. I know I'm not massive on them nowadays, but they tend to be very easy plants. And I kind of feel like this one probably is, considering how much neglect it's received, and it is still growing for me. But yeah, do you cabinet this plant? I think I probably will keep this one in my cabinet for the time being, just because that's where it's been already. But yeah, I'm just making sure all of those upper aerial roots that weren't submerged before are covered in moss, and hopefully that will encourage them to root even more. So yeah, cool. I really look forward to giving you updates on this plant throughout the year, because as I say, I'm determined to pour my energy into my plants this year and get that spark back for plant care that I feel like I'm finding already. And like, when I talk about it, also, by the way, before I start rabbiting on, this is my Philodendron Yopii, which again has been a struggle one. It has been one that I've contemplated getting rid of. And I'm gonna take a look at the roots, but I think I will probably end up doing something similar to this, just because it's currently not doing well, and I want to restart it. But yeah, I feel I don't want to paint it out that I haven't been enjoying plant care, because I absolutely have been. I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't enjoyed it. But you know, like, I don't know, you know, you have a real kind of like spark and drive for something, and then you have times where it dips. And for me, I mean, that's what we know as plant burnout, isn't it? Towards the end of last year, I just spent a lot of time feeling overwhelmed by my plants, feeling kind of a little bit pushed out by my plants, like I couldn't keep on top of things. Also, these roots do not look great, so I'm going to be trimming some of these back. As you can see, some of them are very dark and sludgy, so yeah, I'm going to give... Well, some of them are okay, but I'm going to just give some of them a trim. But yeah, and although I was finding lots of moments that I was enjoying plant care at the end of last year, I also just spent a lot of time feeling like, oh my God, I don't know, it isn't getting to a point where this feels manageable. Like, I'd get on top of everything, and then a few days later I'd be like, oh my God, I'm behind again. And I don't want to be feeling that. I want to be able to allow myself the time that I need to get on top of things at my own pace, and I want to be enjoying it, because it's a hobby at the end of the day. You should be enjoying it. And since I have started stripping things back this year, and I have got rid of some plants, and I have potted up duplicates together to make one plant so that I'm not looking after 5 instead of 1. Since I've started doing those things, and since I've started writing things down and just doing little bits when I have the time to do them, I'm suddenly on top, and I suddenly feel really good again, and I suddenly feel like I love plant care in a way that I haven't felt in a really long time, which is such a nice thing to feel again. Because plant burnout, like, I've spoken about it so much on my channel, but it is 100% a real thing. And I think when something's a hobby, there is that, I don't know, you feel like you should be enjoying it all the time. And that is not the case. That's not the case. Like, plant care is a very... You take on a lot of responsibility with plants, and if you're not in the position for whatever reason to be providing your plants with the level of care that they need, it's stressful. It can be stressful, and it can feel horrible because you feel like you're letting them down. So yeah, I feel like by having this declutter, reset, whatever you want to call it, for me, the word reset feels very appropriate. There's just something about that word that I'm like, yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm resetting. I just now I'm starting to feel energized and positive about all of it again. And it's such, as I say, it's such a nice feeling. But that is what I'm left with. That's what I'm left with there. And I think that should be good going into moss. And again, there is a big section of stem with aerial roots on it just there, that I'm going to submerge in the moss as well. And as you can see, it has got quite a lot of corking towards the bottom, just all that brown stuff there. And that's actually quite unusual on quite a young plant. Although I do remember the Philodendron code 69686, that one was also very prone to corking. So yeah. But I've got a little cup just here. I might actually give the roots, there we go, even more of a trim back, just to give it the best chance starting out again. In fact, that's a cup that's got a hole in it. I've used that one obviously to water a moss pole, so I'm gonna just grab one that doesn't have a hole in it. I just much prefer using containers when I'm propagating in, I mean, pretty much anything to be honest, but specifically talking about sphagnum moss, what I'm using now, I do just prefer using containers without drainage, just because I feel like it helps to keep the moss really, really hydrated. You can kind of just make it like a teeny tiny reservoir at the bottom. I usually do like a centimetre's worth of reservoir and just fill it from there. It just helps to keep it nice and moist all the way through. I'm gonna pop that further down actually. Have any of you guys set yourself, I know I say about New Year's resolutions, but like goals for this year? Anything that relates to plant care, or like your attitude towards plant care or plant burnout or anything like that? I'd be really, really genuinely interested to know if you have. Because there is something like, there's a mental shift going into a new year that just sometimes allows you to form new habits in a way that maybe you hadn't before. And I know for me, like, I often, I'll put on, I've said it before, I'll put on other creators' videos and I'll have them playing in the background while I'm doing my plant stuff, or I'll listen to a podcast, or I'll do something that I find enjoyable and lovely alongside, if plant care's feeling a little bit challenging that day, alongside whatever it is that I'm doing that's planty, and then it will just kind of help to make everything feel lovely and fun again. Also, look how diddy it is. It's like a little hook in a pot. So yeah, not a lot to see there yet, but hopefully that will start doing something for me soon. I'm going to get both of these back into my cabinet, and yeah, as I say, I will let you know what they do next. And the other thing that I was going to ask you guys is, I'm kind of just like figuring out my content for this year and everything, and I am personally so far loving doing more long form content like this, just kind of doing pottering throughout the day with plants, doing things that I need to do and feeling like I'm doing them along with you. I love doing that sort of thing, but I would just be interested to know what you enjoy, what you do when you're watching content. Like, do you do plant stuff along with me? What would you like to see more of? Because I would also like to pair what I enjoy doing with what you enjoy watching. So it's always useful for me to have some feedback. So if you don't want to write out a big long comment, put this emoji if you want more long form content, this emoji if you want more informative content, and this emoji if you want more like 20-minute to half an hour videos. Yeah, if you don't want to go into detail, put one of those emojis, let me know. It would be useful for me to know. But yeah, I think I'm going to end this video here because I feel like I've got through a lot, but without rushing through things today. I feel happy with what I've got done. I'm also ready to go and just put my feet up for a bit before I need to go and get Joli. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, if you were doing plant stuff along with it, I hope you got loads done and I hope you're feeling good about it. And if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.